When my dad told me he was getting remarried, I honestly thought he was joking. He's not the type of guy to make big life decisions on impulse. He plans everything. Spreadsheets, calendars, backup calendars. So when he said over FaceTime, "I've met someone, and we're getting married next month," I nearly dropped my phone. But I said congrats, smiled, and did the supportive son thing. What I didn't expect was to move back in with him that summer, and definitely didn't expect to come home to a new stepbrother, Jesse. The name sounded harmless enough, but Jesse turned out to be the kind of guy you don't forget meeting. I moved in on a Thursday. Dad and his new wife, Karen, greeted me at the door like they hadn't just completely flipped my world upside down. The house looked the same, but it didn't feel like home anymore. There were subtle changes: new plants, scented candles, an extra coffee maker. And then, as I lugged my suitcase upstairs to my old room, I heard the unmistakable sound of someone singing off-key through a half-open door down the hall. That's when I saw him. Shirtless, in gym shorts, dancing terribly while brushing his teeth and singing what I think was Justin Timberlake. He froze when he saw me. I froze too. His eyes flicked down, taking in my suitcase, then back up to my face. "You must be Logan," he said, toothbrush still in his mouth. He didn't stop brushing, didn't even bother covering himself. "Yeah," I replied, adjusting my grip on the handle of my bag. "You must be Jesse." He spit into the sink and smirked. "Welcome home, stepbro." I blinked. Stepbro? He walked past me, still barefoot, and clapped me on the shoulder. "Don't worry, man. I'm cool with sharing." I didn't even know what that meant. The first week was weird. Jesse was the definition of extroverted chaos. Loud, funny, annoyingly charming. The kind of guy who called everyone bro and wore tank tops year-round. He was 2 years younger than me, but somehow carried himself like he ran the place. I kept my distance. He didn't. He was in my space constantly, asking what I was watching, what I was eating, if I wanted to go for a run, which was a hard no. It was like he didn't believe in personal boundaries. Or maybe he just didn't think they applied to us now that we were family. I tried not to overthink it. Jesse was just being friendly. That's what I told myself anyway. But things started to shift one night, about 2 weeks in. Everyone else was out. My dad and Karen had gone to a dinner party. Jesse had been gone all day, some gym thing, I think, but came home late, sweaty and flushed from the heat. I was in my room, door cracked, wearing just boxers and a t-shirt, half asleep and scrolling on my phone. It was late, close to midnight. I didn't hear him come up the stairs, didn't know he was even home until my door opened. "Hey, do you know where?" He stopped. I looked up, startled. He was standing in the doorway, shirt off, towel around his neck, hair still damp. And I was laying there, legs half under the sheet, phone lighting up my face. His eyes flicked down. I reached for the blanket too late. For a second, I thought he'd back out, mumble something about knocking next time and leave. But he didn't. He stepped inside. "Sorry," he said, but he didn't sound sorry. He sounded curious. I sat up straighter. "All good, I thought you were out." He nodded slowly. "I was. You busy?" I blinked. "Kinda." He didn't leave. He just stood there, towel in hand, like he was waiting for something. His eyes were on my face now, but I could feel the tension in the air shift. Not hostile, not awkward, charged. "You should knock next time," I said quietly. "Right," he said, lips curling into a half smile. "But then I might miss something." I swallowed. He was still standing there, still not walking out. The silence was heavy. I kept expecting him to leave, to laugh it off, make some dumb joke, disappear into his room, and never speak of it again. That would have been easier. Safer. But Jesse wasn't budging. He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed over his bare chest, still slightly glistening from whatever brutal workout he'd done. His eyes hadn't left mine. "I wasn't trying to," he started, then cut himself off. "Well, I mean, I didn't think you'd be like that." "Like what?" I asked, trying to sound casual, even though I could feel the heat crawling up my neck. He smirked, a little slower this time. "Relaxed." I swallowed hard. You barged into my room at midnight, Jesse. What did you expect? A three-piece suit? He laughed, but there was something quieter behind it. He stepped inside fully now, one hand still holding the towel draped over his shoulder. Nah, I don't know. Just didn't think I'd catch you like that. I tried not to flinch at the word catch. You could have walked out, I said, keeping my voice calm even. My fingers were still clutched around the edge of the sheet, even though I was fully covered by now. He shrugged. Yeah, I could have, but he didn't. He took another step, and suddenly he was close enough that I could smell the faint mix of soap and sweat clinging to his skin. It wasn't overwhelming. It was just real, human. Jesse was looking at me like he was trying to figure something out. Not mocking, not teasing, just watching. Do you ever get bored in this house? He asked suddenly, voice low. What? Like, trapped. Nowhere to go. No one to talk to. I blinked. That was not what I expected him to say. Yeah, sometimes. He nodded, like he'd been waiting for that answer. Same. He sat down at the edge of my bed, slowly, testing the waters, and when I didn't say anything, he stayed. The mattress dipped slightly under his weight. My room was small enough that even a couple feet apart felt too close. I missed the city, I said after a beat, not sure why I was sharing that. Me too, he murmured, even though I hated the noise. At least it felt alive. We sat there, quiet, the only sound, the hum of my fan, and the low buzz of cicadas outside. I could feel the tension ease, but not entirely. It wasn't gone. It had just shifted. He leaned back on his palms, looking over at me. You and I don't really talk, huh? Not really. Why not? I met his eyes. I figured you weren't interested. His mouth twitched, just slightly. That's the thing. I didn't think you were either. We sat in that weird little bubble for a moment, both of us unsure how we'd gotten here, but not quite ready to leave it. Then he asked the question. So, were you watching something? I stiffened. Seriously? What? I mean, you looked pretty into it when I walked in. Jesse, I'm not judging. His voice was gentle now. I'm just saying, it didn't bother me. I looked at him, really looked at him. His face was open, curious, but not mocking. And that's when I saw it. That flicker, that subtle thing in his eyes I hadn't noticed before. Interest. I thought you were straight, I said, my voice quieter now. Not accusing, just confused. His gaze didn't waver. I thought I was too. My breath caught, and there it was. No jokes, no half smiles. Just a truth that hung between us like it had always been waiting to be said. I didn't know what to do with it. I wasn't sure he did either. But he didn't walk out. He didn't brush it off or retreat behind some fake bravado. He just sat there, watching me, waiting. And I suddenly realized I didn't want him to leave. There was this moment, this pause, where everything felt suspended. The quiet between us wasn't awkward anymore. It was charged, like both of us were standing at the edge of something we weren't sure we were ready to jump into. And yet, neither of us was pulling back. Jesse looked down at the floor, his fingers toying with the edge of the towel draped around his neck. I don't know what I'm doing, he said, almost to himself. I didn't mean to walk in on you like that. I swear. I nodded, still watching him. I believe you. He looked up again, and for the first time, I saw it. Uncertainty, not the cocky guy who teased me in the hallway or flexed in the mirror while brushing his teeth. This was different, softer. He shook his head, laughing quietly. You were always kind of a mystery. Quiet, chill, kept to yourself. And then I come in here and... He stopped himself. It's like I saw something I wasn't supposed to. You didn't, I said gently. It's not like I was hiding anything. His eyes flicked up again. No? I hesitated. Okay, maybe I was. A little. He smiled at that, but it didn't reach his eyes. I've never been with a guy, he said. Not even close. But when I saw you just now, I don't know, man. It hit different. I let that sit for a second. Not pushing, not pulling, just listening. Jesse leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees, hands clasped. I'm not saying I know what I want. I'm not trying to mess with you or make this weird, but something about you tonight made it hard to walk away. That sentence, made it hard to walk away, hung in the air. My pulse kicked up. I could feel the heat in my chest spreading, slow and electric. You're not messing with me? I asked, just to be sure. Because if you are... I'm not, he cut in, his voice serious now. I wouldn't. I couldn't. I studied him, the way his jaw clenched slightly, the way his fingers tapped restlessly on his leg like he was nervous. Jesse wasn't the type to fake nerves. If anything, he was usually the first one to break tension with some dumb joke or sarcastic comment, but now he looked grounded, honest. I shifted, sitting up straighter. Okay, so now what? He blinked, surprised I didn't shut him down. I don't know. I didn't think I'd get this far. We both laughed at that. Nervous, awkward, but real. It broke the tension just enough for me to breathe again. I'm not gonna pretend this is normal, I said, meeting his eyes. It's not. You're my stepbrother, he smirked. We're not blood related. Doesn't mean it's not complicated. Yeah, but complicated doesn't always mean bad. I didn't have an argument for that. He looked at me for a long time, something shifting behind his expression. Then he stood up. I thought he was leaving, that he'd finally gotten whatever curiosity he came in with out of his system. But instead, he took one step closer. I should probably let you get some sleep, he said. I nodded. Yeah, probably. He didn't move. His eyes dropped to my lips for the briefest second. Then he took a breath, like he was about to say something else, but didn't. He just turned, walked to the door, and paused with his hand on the frame. You want to hang out tomorrow? He asked, not looking back. I blinked. Hang out how? He glanced over his shoulder, grinning now. I don't know. Watch a movie, go for a drive. Just not avoid each other? A small smile tugged at the corner of my mouth. Yeah, sure. He nodded, then walked out, closing the door behind him. I sat there for a long time after that, just staring at the closed door, heart still racing. Jesse had walked in on me. But what mattered more was that he hadn't walked out. The next morning, everything felt strangely normal, except it wasn't. Jesse was already up when I came downstairs. He was standing at the kitchen counter in gym shorts and a hoodie, pouring cereal into a bowl like nothing had happened the night before, like he hadn't walked into my room, seen me at my most vulnerable, and confessed whatever that was. Morning, he said without looking up. I grunted something in return, still half asleep, and made a beeline for the coffee machine. I could feel him watching me though, not in a weird way, more like he was waiting for a signal, some clue about how I was feeling. Truthfully, I wasn't sure. After I poured my coffee, I leaned against the counter and finally looked at him. You meant it last night, Jesse blinked. Which part? That you weren't messing with me. His expression didn't change. Yeah, I meant it. I nodded slowly, taking a sip. Okay, he echoed, like he wasn't sure if I was agreeing or just buying time. Okay, as in, I believe you. Something in his posture relaxed. He slid the cereal box toward me. Want some? Nah, just coffee for now. We didn't say much after that, but it wasn't uncomfortable. The weird tension from before had been replaced with something tentative, like we were both walking on a bridge, unsure if it would hold. Later that afternoon, we ended up on the couch, like he suggested. Some random action movie played in the background, but we weren't really watching it. Jesse sat closer than usual, but not in a way that screamed, I'm trying to make a move. It was more like proximity was part of the conversation now. At one point, his knee brushed mine. I didn't pull away. He didn't either. We sat like that for a while, barely touching, barely talking, but fully aware of each other. You ever tell anyone? He asked suddenly, eyes still on the TV. Tell them what? He glanced at me. About you. Liking guys, I shrugged. A few people. Friends back in college. Not my dad, obviously. Why not? I scoffed. You've met him. Do you think that conversation would end with a hug? Jesse gave a quiet laugh. Fair point. What about you? I asked. He hesitated. No one. Not even myself. Until recently. Until last night? He didn't answer right away. Then, quietly, until a few weeks ago, when you moved in. That surprised me. I turned to look at him, really look at him. He wasn't smiling. He looked serious. I didn't know what it was at first, he said. I just kept noticing you, noticing how you looked at me, how you didn't look at me sometimes. I started wondering what that meant. Then last night, I think I got my answer. I felt my chest tighten, not in a bad way, just intensely. Jesse, I don't want this to be a joke or a phase. It's not. He said it so quickly, so firmly, that I almost believed him. Almost. I still had doubts about him, about myself, about what we were even doing. But then he did something simple. He reached over, hand brushing against mine. Not grabbing, not holding, just touching. Barely, and I didn't pull away. Okay, I said again, softly this time. Okay. We stayed like that until the movie ended, neither of us moving. I wasn't sure where this was going, but for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like running from it. It was weird how quickly things changed after that. Not big, dramatic shifts. Nothing anyone else would notice. But in the small things, the in-between moments, something was different. Jesse didn't hover, didn't push, but he stayed close in this way that felt deliberate, intentional. He'd bump into me more often in the kitchen, lean a little too close when reaching past me for the salt. He started knocking on my door instead of barging in, but sometimes he wouldn't wait for an answer. He just wanted to be around me, and I didn't mind. One night, about a week later, we were both up late. The house was quiet. Our parents had gone to bed hours ago. I was in the living room, lights dimmed, flipping through a book I wasn't really reading. Jesse wandered in shirtless, towel around his neck again, his hair damp from a shower. He had that same easy posture, barefoot, relaxed, but his eyes said otherwise. He sat next to me without asking. After a minute, he nudged my leg with his. What are you reading? Nothing important. He leaned closer. You always say that when you don't want to talk about something. I raised an eyebrow. You picking up on my habits already? He smirked. Maybe. He didn't move away. In fact, he leaned back against the couch, his arms settling just behind me. Not touching, but close enough to feel. The smell of soap still clung to him. Clean, warm. He shifted again. This time, his thigh pressed fully against mine, and still, I didn't move. Neither of us said anything for a long time. Sometimes, he said finally, I think about that night. I turned to look at him. What part? He hesitated. All of it. The way I walked in, how you looked, how I felt. Freaked out? I asked. He gave a slow shake of his head. No. I should have been, but I wasn't. That's the part that stuck with me. I swallowed. You didn't freak out because you liked what you saw? His eyes flicked to mine. Yeah, I did. It wasn't a confession shouted from rooftops. It wasn't a dramatic declaration. But in his voice, quiet, steady, I felt the weight of it. Jesse, the guy who never slowed down, never took anything seriously, was being real with me. And maybe I wasn't ready to admit it before, but I'd been waiting for that. I shifted toward him slightly, my shoulder brushing his. So what now? He looked at me, really looked at me. That depends. What do you want? It was the first time he'd asked. I could have played it safe, said something vague. Dodged. But I didn't. I want to see where this goes, I said quietly, without either of us pretending it's just curiosity. His lips parted slightly like he hadn't expected me to say that, but there was no panic in his eyes. Just something else. Something softer. He nodded slowly. Okay. Then, without asking, he reached over and took my hand. Not in a dramatic way, just like he'd wanted to for a while and finally got the green light. His fingers threaded through mine, and suddenly, the tension that had built between us for days, weeks even, began to unravel, one nod at a time. We sat like that, hand in hand, the glow of the lamp casting a soft halo around us. For once, it didn't feel wrong, it didn't feel weird, it just felt quiet and right. From the outside, nothing looked different. Our parents went about their routines. The house still smelled like coffee in the mornings and grilled chicken at night. The lawn still got mowed every Sunday, and Karen still left passive-aggressive sticky notes about dishes in the sink. But Jesse and I, we were different. It wasn't some huge transformation. There were no secret kisses or dramatic stares over dinner. It was quieter than that, more private. Sometimes we'd end up in the same room late at night, not talking much, just sharing space. Other times we'd brush fingers in the hallway and pretend it didn't happen, even though it always did. Jesse would sit a little closer on the couch. I'd let him. We never said out loud what we were doing, but we both knew we were in it. Whatever it was, one night it was raining. Heavy summer rain, the kind that drowns out your thoughts and makes everything feel slower. I was in my room, trying to write something for a freelance gig I'd picked up, but my brain wasn't cooperating. The storm outside was louder than my focus. Then I heard the knock. "Come in," I called, already knowing it was him. Jesse stepped in, wearing flannel pants and a hoodie. He looked younger like that, softer. He didn't say anything at first. Just walked in and sat at the foot of my bed like he'd done it 100 times before. "You okay?" I asked. He nodded. "Just couldn't sleep." I raised an eyebrow. "Since when does rain keep you up?" He shrugged. "Wasn't the rain?" He didn't say what it was, but I had a pretty good guess. He looked over at my laptop. "You writing?" "Trying to." He leaned back on his hands, stretching his legs out across the comforter. "You ever think about, I don't know, what happens after this summer?" I froze. The question caught me off guard, not because I hadn't thought about it, but because I thought about it too much. Jesse was supposed to go back to school in the fall. I was supposed to start looking for a new apartment. This whole thing between us was technically temporary, even if it didn't feel that way. I closed the laptop. "Sometimes." He nodded like he was relieved. I didn't dodge it. "It's been kind of messing with my head." "What part?" He looked at me, his expression unreadable. "The part where I don't want it to end." The words sat between us. He wasn't the best at saying serious things. He usually wrapped them in jokes or sarcasm. But this was clear, unfiltered. And yeah, it hit me. "I've been thinking about that too," I said. "I mean, I didn't expect any of this. I didn't even want to come back here. But now," he gave a half smile, "now you're stuck with me." I smiled back. "Could be worse." He shifted closer. His hand found mine again, like it belonged there. "Can I ask you something?" he said after a beat. "Sure. Do you ever wish we weren't like stepbrothers?" It took me a second. "Sometimes," I admitted. "But not because of you, just because it makes everything complicated." He nodded. "Yeah, but I also think," I hesitated, then finished, "maybe that's what makes this real. If it was simple, maybe we wouldn't even be here." He looked at me for a long time. Then he leaned in, slow, careful, giving me time to pull away if I wanted to. I didn't. Our lips met for the first time, soft and uncertain, like we were testing gravity. The kiss wasn't perfect. It wasn't dramatic or fireworks and strings kind of stuff. It was hesitant and honest and exactly what it needed to be. When we pulled back, Jesse's forehead rested against mine. "This okay?" he whispered. "Yeah," I breathed. "It is." And it was. Because for once, we weren't pretending. After that night, after the kiss, everything felt different. Not in a bad way, not even in a confusing way. Just different. Like we'd crossed some invisible line, and now we were quietly learning how to live on the other side of it. There weren't any grand declarations. No dramatic heart-to-hearts. But Jesse started coming into my room more often. Sometimes we'd just lie there, side by side, not even talking. Sometimes we'd kiss, slow and careful, like we were still figuring out the rules. I started noticing the little things. Like how he'd wait for me to come downstairs in the morning before making coffee. How he'd let our hands brush while doing dishes, then glance at me like I felt that too. How he'd smile just a little longer when no one else was around. But we still hadn't talked about what any of it meant. Not really. And the unspoken stuff, the fall semester, our parents, the fact that we were technically stepbrothers, it loomed over everything like a ticking clock. I didn't want to be the one to break the spell. But eventually, I had to say something. It happened one evening in the garage. We were fixing up Dad's old bike, something he hadn't ridden in years but refused to throw away. Jesse was bent over the rear wheel trying to unstick a rusted chain, sweat darkening the back of his t-shirt. I was holding the light. "I'm thinking about moving out," I said suddenly. Jesse paused but didn't look up. "When?" "After summer, once I find a place." He nodded slowly, still focused on the chain. "Yeah, makes sense." Silence. Then, quietly, "You still gonna talk to me when you do?" I looked at him. He was keeping his voice light, but I could hear the weight behind the question. "Of course," I said, "unless you disappear on me first." Jesse stood up then, wiping his hands on a rag. His jaw was tight. "I don't want this to just be a summer thing," he said, finally meeting my eyes. "Not if it meant something to you too." I stepped closer. "It did." He took a breath. "Then maybe we should figure out how to keep it going, even after everything changes." That was the thing about Jesse. He didn't always know the right words, but when he showed up, he really showed up. "I want that too," I said. He let out a breath and gave a shaky smile. "Good." That night, we fell asleep in my room for the first time. No sneaking around, no pretending he was just there to talk. Just two guys figuring out how to be honest with each other. It wasn't perfect. I still didn't know how we'd explain it to our parents, or if we even should. I didn't know what would happen once we went back to our separate lives, separate schools, separate plans. But I knew I didn't want to go back to pretending this hadn't happened. I didn't want to forget what it felt like when he looked at me like I mattered. And I was starting to believe maybe we could actually do this. The last week of summer came faster than I expected. There were boxes in the hallway again. Mine this time. I'd finally found a small apartment near the design studio where I'd picked up a part-time job. Jesse had classes starting in 2 weeks. Karen was already planning some kind of farewell dinner. And Dad kept saying things like, "It's good you're getting back out there," even though his tone made it sound like out there was something dangerous. What nobody knew, what we hadn't told anyone, was that Jesse and I had been quietly trying to figure out what this thing between us meant. We hadn't labeled it. We weren't making any declarations. But it was real, and it wasn't going away. That last night before I moved out, Jesse knocked on my door just after midnight. He didn't wait for me to answer. He just stepped inside, like he always did now. He looked calm, but I could tell he wasn't. "You packed?" he asked, nodding toward the half-closed suitcase on my bed. "Mostly." He rubbed the back of his neck. "Feels weird?" "Yeah," I said. "It does." He sat on the edge of the bed, quiet for a second. Then, without looking at me, he said, "You sure you want to do this? Move out?" "No." He finally looked up. "Us, whatever this is." I sat down next to him. "Yes," I said, "I do." His shoulders relaxed slightly. He leaned back, staring at the ceiling. "Cool, me too." We stayed like that for a while, both staring at nothing, letting the weight of everything settle. Then he turned to me. "So, how are we doing this?" "You mean us?" Yeah, like, do we talk every day? Do I visit? Do you visit? Are we still pretending we're just stepbrothers who hang out a lot when we're around our parents? I laughed quietly. You're really overthinking this, he shoved my arm. Dude, I've never done this. I haven't either, he raised an eyebrow. Yeah, but you're cooler about it. Cooler? I scoffed. You freaked out way less than I thought you would when you walked in on me, remember? He smirked. To be fair, it was a good view. I rolled my eyes and tried not to smile. You're such an idiot. You're idiot, he said under his breath, and that one caught me off guard. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't even flirtation. It was just honest. I leaned in, kissed him softly, slow, careful, but sure. And when I pulled back, he rested his forehead against mine. I'll visit, he whispered, even if it's just for the weekend. I'll make it work. Same here, I said. We'll figure it out. He nodded, like he believed it. Like we both did. The next morning, we kept our distance in front of everyone. A quick hug in the driveway. A casual text me when you get there, but when I got to my new place, there was already a message from him waiting on my phone. I'm proud of you. Also, I miss you already. Don't get too hot without me around to cool you off. Typical Jesse. But it made me smile. I didn't know what the future looked like. Maybe it'd be hard. Maybe it'd get messy. But the one thing I knew for sure, that night when he walked into my room, it could have ended there. But it didn't. Because he didn't walk out. And neither will I.